Hola persona que me estás viendo desde Bután, persona que me estás viendo desde Bulgaria, persona que me estás viendo desde Bursaco. Mi nombre es Nachito y vamos a seguir aprendiendo de diseño y jugando el Braid. Redescubriendo el Braid en mi caso. Allá vamos.
Movement Amplified. Is that another novel title? Or
No, I mean,
it makes sense in this level.
it was where this came from was these two levels. I was originally thinking of them as being kind of parallel to each other, and they ended up maybe not so much.
Well, when you get on the cloud train here, including this first pair of cloud trains,
Yes.
again, so for me at least, for the style of games that I like, this was another one of these wonderful moments where it's like, oh, so is this a new object? Like, is this a super fast conveyor belt? Because you find those sometimes in games, right?
Oh, yeah.
But no, it's the same engine following the same rules. It's just that there's a little bit of a recursion here where, well, you're standing on some moving clouds. As time changes, the clouds move, but that makes time change more. And it's also kind of confusing at first, right? That it speeds it up going in either direction. But think about it. It makes sense. If you're running the clouds backwards, they move farther to the left, which means faster backwards. And if you move to the right, they're moving faster to the right, which makes time go faster. Yes. And I hope I said that right.
There is also a technical note about this and how it was programmed and why that's the right math. Yeah.
Right. When you realize that this is following from the same physics and the same engine, again, using the word physics somewhat broadly.
Sure.
For me, there's a real pleasure in that because, you know, if every new puzzle has a new widget with new behavior, well, maybe that's not the right way to make more variety. You know, maybe it's nice to have the variety emerge from the rules. So I really enjoyed both these cloud trains and the next one. And of course, this was a little bit tricky, and I thought at first I had to do something else. It's a nice fact that the key rolls back toward you if you screw up.
Yeah. So here I brought back the left-right gate, right? But
is there any way to?
No.
Yeah, we can't ever use the
just,
right gate.
It's more like a callback to the earlier part of the game, right? In case you'd forgotten about it, about your poor performance in that episode, we bring it back.
And so then we have another one of these things, again, amplified by time. We have this nice moment. We have to jump on it, even though it's off camera, but it's okay. We know it's going to be there in time to catch us, and there it is. And we can just barely make it onto the next platform.
Which, I mean, really, that's the kind of leap of faith in the game,
right?
Honestly, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So that's nice.
Yeah.
Series infinitas. ¿Por qué me llevas al próximo nodo que de todas maneras voy a escuchar? Es el próximo nodo, ¿no? No. Es una versión del mundo donde ese nodo está activado. Series infinitas, ¿eh?
Programming World 4 so that these clouds would work was pretty interesting. Every frame, a video game must know how long it should simulate the motion of its objects in order to make the rendered scene look smooth. For most games, the simulated time matches the real time measured by the clock on your wall. If the game is displaying at 60 frames per second, then each frame should represent 1/60th of a second of simulation time. Braid plays around with time very heavily, though, especially on this world. Through World 4, we use the player's speed at the start of the frame to determine how much time should be simulated. But as explained in another note on this level, when you're riding on a moving object, this relationship gets very complicated. It appears to have an infinite regress, where your motion causes the platform you're riding on to move, which causes you to move even more, which makes time go forward more, which makes the platform move further, and so on forever. An unsophisticated implementation might run many simulation steps instead of one, simulating ever smaller amounts of time until we decide that the residual amount is so small that we can ignore it. The problem is that running a simulation may require the computer to do a lot of computational work, which takes time. Running many simulation steps takes a lot more time than one step, and in this game, the amount of work to do in each step does not really decrease as we make the simulation time shorter. So we would be in danger of taking too long to compute all the simulation steps, resulting in a low frame rate for the game, which would feel pretty bad. Fortunately, we don't have to do a bunch of simulation steps if we know a little bit of math. The result of walking on a moving platform can be represented as the summation of a geometric series, and provided the speeds of the objects you're riding on are reasonable, the series converges. It's representable in closed form very simply. We just need to do an extra add, a multiply, and a divide. Much cheaper than running many simulation steps. We'll cover the exact math for this in the next part.
Ok, entonces los portales son como una progresión para que encuentres nuevos nodos si querés ir profundizando. Vamos a ver si ahora nos habla de las matemáticas detrás de estas nubes.
In this world, time moves as you move. You move to the right, time goes forward. You move to the left, time goes backward. Usually you're running on solid ground, but what happens if you're riding on a platform that is itself moving? If you're walking to the right, time for the world goes forward because of your motion. So the platform, being part of the world, moves right. Since the platform is carrying you, it takes you even further to the right than you would have gone if you were just walking. So time should go forward even faster because your speed through the world is faster than walking speed. If you're walking to the left, time goes backward in the whole world, and the platform, being part of the world, goes left now, because right was forward for the platform, left is backward. This carries you further to the left, which makes time go backward even faster than on solid ground. So interestingly, time goes faster in both directions. Riding on a moving object acts as an amplifier of the amount of time that passes, both forward and backward, as long as the object is moving to the right when time is forward. If the object is moving to the left when time is forward, it works against your walking speed, so it reduces the amount of time that passes, so you go more slowly, again, both forward and backward. Since before you get to this world, the game involves riding on lots of moving objects, the game would be incomplete if it didn't explore the interaction of platforms with the world for time behavior, and the player would miss out on some weird moments. In this level, I wanted the player to interact with a surface moving forward and a surface moving backward. I wanted them close to each other so you could see both moving at once. Usually in this game, the platforms you ride on are short, but the speed up or slow down effect would only happen momentarily on a short surface because you would walk off the surface pretty quickly, and that would be disorienting due to the rapidly changing speeds, and it would be harder for the player to understand what's happening, and harder for us to make puzzles with. So I needed a way to make long platforms. Here I did that with cannons shooting clouds at a very fast rate, though on the right side of the level we have a comically large cloud that floats by for no apparent reason. There are also some technical issues involved in making this all happen, doing the programming and working out the math, that are pretty interesting.
Vamos a resolver este puzzle. Mientras vamos a escuchar el nodo de arte, que ya vi que cambiaron unas cuantas cositas. Mira qué belleza. Le agregaron algunas temáticas sci-fi. El futurismo de la nave esa y el dinosaurio.
Well, here's another puzzle area. So we did another visual upgrade, and kind of taking a cue from the rocking horse and the blocks in the preceding level, we have some more things that might be childhood toys, you know, a rocket ship and a dinosaur. I mean, these are also like things from maybe like science education, but from like the opposite ends of the timeline, dinosaurs preceding humans and rocket ships from our sci-fi future. So there's kind of a layer of like scientific inquiry, but in a childlike way. The rocket ship and the dinosaur are also kind of helping to emphasize the nature of the challenge here, which is how to get to those high platforms. They're helping to draw attention to the fact of their height. Rocket ships flying in the sky, a dinosaur with a long neck eating from a high branch, looking like it's about to eat the puzzle piece in this case. So it kind of makes you think about how could you be as tall as a dinosaur or fly like a rocket? And once you figure that out, you feel pretty good about yourself, I have to say.
I mean, yeah, it does a really good job of leading your eyeball up toward where you're supposed to go. There's also, if you express science with this childlike imagery, that kind of reflects maybe him, being naive and messing with nature.
Yeah, that for sure. Yeah, I think that's true, that there's a naivete about Tim's inquiry and playing with the laws of nature. Is he ready to wield this power? I don't know.
Stay tuned, folks.
Eso se llama bancar temáticamente el tema, valga la redundancia, del juego, ¿no? Ciencia, hasta dónde nos puede llevar las ambiciones infantiles del protagonista. Compañero caprichoso. Observa que esta llave no brilla de verde, con lo cual cuando avanzo va a estar registrando todos los movimientos que hace, y si voy para la izquierda los va a rebobinar, pero por separado de mi personaje. Bien.
And this is the other one that was really frustrating at first, and at first just felt like some cruel new tweak of the engine, and then one realizes that the punishment is just and fair, and that it's the same engine that's always been there. You just have not encountered before a good old-fashioned rewindable key, which you are trying to carry to the left. And you can't, because when you move to the left, it's going back in its timeline. And in fact, it took me a little while to realize that even when I'm walking on a platform, it's like, gee, why is it kind of bobbing along with me? Oh, I'm not carrying it. It just happens to be moving backwards in time, in sync with my moving to the left. The title of this one, Fickle Companion, it's like, how do I get this thing to stay with me? It's always jumping away from me. It just takes a while to realize. In fact, I may even have solved this the first time without quite realizing the logic of it, just kind of trial and error.
Sure.
But then on my second and third playthroughs, I'm like, oh, this is behaving exactly as it is supposed to behave. And, then we have to play with the platform, keep the monster alive.
Put the key in the right place.
Yeah, and that took me a couple of tries. It's like he would get the key, but then I was behind him, and then I was following him, and then I didn't get the key in time. There's a nice little chime when you kind of reacquire the key and restart its writing. And then there's this ending part also is very nice, where you have to get the key from him. You can move left through there. Then you have to get the key from him again to get through that second gate. And then I sat there for a while saying, but how do I get back out?
Yeah.
And then I realized, oh, I can just rewind out because it's a sparkly puzzle piece.
You could come up with ways to make it a longer puzzle, but
right.
I felt like at that point the job was done, right?
Yeah, and here you can just sort of pull the ripcord and rewind out. And then I loved the fact that the space equals time mechanic is still applying to the stuffed dinosaur's speech. And, that was really fun.
Bueno. No estaba prestando atención al video, de forma que no recuerdo la solución a este puzzle, así que vamos a resolverlo en vivo mientras escuchamos el próximo audio. Mirá todas las referencias que metieron acá en el arte, no se quedaron con ganas de nada. Yo recordaba que estaba ese Aleph sub 1 ahí, de la versión anterior. Ahora le metieron más cosas. Me pregunto si será una referencia a Borges. Mirá. Es como una especie de templo. Y le metieron una grabadora.
Yeah, this is the one case where we really redesigned the castle. I guess I just felt like the old castle wasn't that interesting, and I think that probably had something to do with its unique characteristic of being one that you run through. Usually, you get to the castle and it's like a large illustration in the background, but this castle is like in the foreground underneath you, and somehow that like led me to do kind of a more regular shaped thing. The motifs here, again, it's like drawing from childhood things. I mean, if the clues are in the puzzle painting for this stage. Actually, John wanted me to put a Commodore 64 in there, which was one of his first computers. So yeah, there's a kind of a motif suggesting a keyboard, and there's the tape, which was used for memory in those days. And above, something that maybe resembles like a, what's it called? Motherboard.
Yeah, PCB.
Yeah.
I think it sticks to your rule of if you're massively changing something, it's in an area that's purely visual and there's no puzzles.
Well, we don't want to change anything that would distract you or disrupt the puzzle. So yeah, we've been more bold, certainly where in like the castle approach areas, there's nothing, there's no puzzles, so you can like be more distracting if you want to be. But I like this a lot. I'm actually happy with that. The cassette is just built from particle systems, like very normal particle systems, and I just figured out how to make it look like it was running.
Bueno, tenemos 2 pases para resolver. Y me dormí en los laureles. En este caso los laureles son... que vengo usando... Que vengo usando la pista de comentarios para recordarme las soluciones de los pases. Y ahora voy a tener que usar la lógica. Rayos. Estoy queriendo rebobinar la llave. Ah, pero sí voy a poder porque la llave... A ver. Otra forma más fácil de hacer esto. ¿Qué pasa si subo con la llave? Me la puedo traer hasta acá. Pero eso no me sirve de nada. Bueno, obviamente la manera de moverla acá hacia la izquierda es que me la traiga el maloso, el muchacho de abajo, para lo cual yo necesito dejársela acá. Bien. Ahora tengo que grabar el movimiento de esta plataforma hacia la derecha Ay, qué pelotudo, dejé de grabar la llave. Vamos a venir por acá. ¡Dale! Vamos a reiniciar. Me agarró desprevenido este puzzle. Vos, que me estás viendo en YouTube, afortunadamente tenés el control del tiempo y podés avanzar. Ok. Creo que no tengo forma de subirme a esta plataforma. No. Ok. La llave está acá y tengo que tratar de no tocarla para no agarrarla y no reescribir su movimiento. Y lo que tengo que hacer ahora es matar a este muchacho. Reescribí el movimiento. ¡Qué pete! ¡Iji! Bueno. Solo uno más. ¿Qué es? Esta puerta ya la sé abrir. No hay chance de que el enemigo llegue solo hasta la segunda puerta. Sí a la primera puerta. Esa la puede abrir él solo. Claro que ahí la llave queda inutilizada, así que... Vamos a agarrar la llave. Abrir esto. Un momento. Ah, sí, no es tan difícil. Abrimos esto, venimos hasta acá. No sé qué hice. Claro, lo que pasa es que la llave no viaja con él. Si así uso el recurso de rebobinar para poder volver a entrar acá, la llave se rebobina conmigo. Es la primera vez que eso sucede, por eso es tan aberrante el gameplay. Yo rebobino esto y voy para acá. ¿La puerta se abre o no se abre? No sé si esa plataforma cambiando de lugar cambia algo. Sí, el hecho de que la plataforma esté a la izquierda significa que el muchacho puede llegar solo hasta ahí. Si yo le doy la llave. Ajá. Creo que ya lo tengo. No, no es eso lo que quería hacer. Rayo, tengo que esperar que vuelva. No, dame la llave. Acá. Uf, está complicado este. Está complicado llevar registro en mi cabeza de dónde estuvo la llave. Ah, no puede abrir la puerta a él. Ah, demonios. El tema es que tanto la puerta como la llave siguen el paso del tiempo, con lo cual, si ya abrí la puerta una vez, la llave quedó inutilizada. Yo tengo forma de llegar hasta acá abajo estando esta puerta cerrada. Hmm. Además, ¿cuál es la función de esta plataforma? Tranquilo, no es que yo sea súper inteligente, sino que es todo prueba y error. La pregunta es si ahora puedo volver con esto. Ah, bueno, pero puedo hacer esto que me... Nos vimos. Todo prueba y error. Nada de inteligencia. La diferencia del sonido es muy notoria, además de las visuales, ¿no? Escuchá. Nada que ver. Vamos a armar este puzzle y vamos a seguir al mundo 5. Que habiendo visto la ilustración es bastante más fácil. Qué bien que están los efectos de sonido. A ver si cambiaron acá. Sí, cambiaron. Hay alguien queriendo entrar por la ventana. O escapándose por la ventana. Ahí está la Commodore. Sin embargo, no veo ni dinosaurios ni cohetes, que eran motivos que estaban en el nivel. Continuemos. Mundo 5, allá vamos. Ella nunca comprendió los impulsos que lo motivaban. Nunca sintió la intensidad que, con el tiempo, cinceló arrugas en su rostro. Nunca estuvo suficientemente cerca de él, aunque pensara que sí, y le susurrara al oído palabras que solo debería escuchar un alma gemela. En la sobremesa de la cena, ambos supieron que era el momento. Él habría dicho: debo ir a buscar a la princesa, pero no fue necesario. Se dieron un último beso. Se llevó al hombro la bolsa de viaje y salió por la puerta. Todas las noches que siguieron, ella lo quiso como si se hubiera quedado, para consolarla y protegerla. Maldita princesa. Acá aprendemos que la princesa no es la novia o la pareja de Tim.
So this is the world and story screen, also known as the cloud screen. It's the middle ground between Tim's house and the worlds he enters. And it's a moment of imaginative reorganization of things, of the world and its appearance and the laws governing time. In the original version that John showed me, he'd put in a photograph of clouds, already had a good idea that he wanted clouds here. And yet he was open to me exploring. I brought in a kind of theatrical motif again. I guess the idea was Tim's house becomes some like theatrical set facades that could be wheeled away. In fact, they're abstracting into color shapes, and it's looking more like a painting. As you go to the right, the bright yellow and orange and blue suggesting excitement, possibility, and like the waves down below, very abstracted, very iconic, suggesting washing away these set pieces, transformation, creative destruction, the chair hovering, the normal laws of nature being suspended or changed. I like this a lot, actually. I hoped we would use it, but John felt there was something lost, and he did humor me as I explored a series of revisions, introducing an outdoor nighttime element to this scene, then pushing the theatrical elements more to the outside and focusing more on the clouds and the moon, and finally arriving back at a bright daytime cloud scene. At the time when I was working on a nighttime cloud scene with this moon that looks a bit like a malevolent eye with a heavy cloud brow furrowed over it, I was also exploring the idea of having the world you're approaching kind of come at you three-dimensionally somehow, or maybe through successive scenes. The castle you're approaching gets closer and closer as the landscape evolves.
No me gusta el motivo de la cuestión teátrica, sí, esas exploraciones nocturnas. Muy bonito. Este me gusta mucho, me gustan las páginas flotando.
Like the title version of Menem, this alternative version was created from the original stereo track, as we hadn't received the stems yet, and it worked out so well that we didn't even attempt to approve it using stems. The basic idea was to separate the solo instruments from the background drone and then trigger fragments of the solos when opening the books. This wasn't too hard to achieve using the original stereo mix, since the background drone is very static. Using the drone as a noise profile in a denoising algorithm, the solo instrument would be isolated, and by inverting the process, we'd largely have the drone isolated. The drone part retained an ethereal shadow of the melody, so when you walk from the house into the cloud, it feels like the melody is being pushed into the background, behind the clouds. The instrument fragments that are triggered when opening the books are a mix of cello flageolets and Korean lute gestures, extracted from the original stereo track.
¡Wow! No le había prestado atención a toda esta atención al detalle. Quiero que entre el violín principal para escuchar cómo se va al fondo cuando entras a las nubes. Y cuando abrís los libros, queda muy bien. El tema es que te lo tienen que señalar para que lo notes, porque si no, vos decís, ah, bueno, es la música de fondo. Vamos allá.
What about the things that did work? Like, how did we end up getting to like World 5, for example, or the final world or whatever?
Well, again, starting with these principles of it was a physics game, but now it's a rewind game. Okay, what can we do? Like the physics informs what kind of rewind things we could think about. And so, hey, there's this whole quantum mechanics thing. There's, for example, this whole many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics. And so maybe there's a world where you can somehow control what choices get made and they happen differently in different things. And that's where World 5 came from. And starting with that abstract idea, and then there's the question like, okay, how is that concretely implemented within the framework that we have? And it's like, well, it's a game where you rewind. So instead of rewind just undoing everything that you did, what if all that stuff just happens again? But then you also now can do something new. And once you think of that, it's like, well, do you support that n times or is 2 enough? And I decided to stay with 2.
Okay.
And also there are other questions. So the temptation, if you want the most easily implementable thing, you would be like, well, we somehow just replay the rewind data that you just rewound, right? We save that somewhere and we push it back on going forward. And then you can just also do something new. But I didn't want to do that because if both realities going forward are totally separate and cannot communicate, that's a little bit dry and it leaves off the ability to do certain kinds of puzzles. So for example, in World 3, we have objects that are immune to rewind, right? You could have that here too. Are there still like 2 of them in 2 separate universes or is it one? Like, what does that mean? That's a question. And then is there a different thing, which is again, the same way that things were exempt from being rewound before? Is there things are exempt from being in 2 universes, right? Are they in one always?
Right.
As soon as I thought of that, it's like, okay, then you definitely can't just replay the same thing forward because by doing things in one universe, you can change the state of the other universe at a given time because you, like there's a monster that's in both and you stomped on him in one and so he dies in the other one as well.
Right, yeah. So basically what you ended up choosing was the one where, okay, we're going to act as if there is a second player who just happens to try to do exactly the same things you did at the exact times you tried them. But then we're going to recompute the physics of what happens to the guy based on the actual positions of all the things according to the world rules. So if you move a platform that only exists once across both realities, then he will just miss it if now it's not there and fall down or whatever.
Or if something is there that wasn't there before.
Now he can't run through it or something.
Etc.
Lands on one yet.
Yes.
Rebuscadito. Esta música me encanta. Y esta escenografía también se vuelve mucho más caótico todo, ¿no? Escuché el remaster de la música.
World 5 is about a choice and about a crossroads and what would happen given 2 different decisions. And because of the time bending here, we're actually able to experience both. So when you rewind, we get a shadow version running in parallel with the other, where you have two Tims doing two different things with two outcomes. Narratively, this is about a decision and going in two very different directions. One being a kind of domestic safety and security, and the other being a kind of wilderness of some kind, like to stay or to leave. And so we have all these domestic things that look like not only domestic, but like very nice, very opulent and comfortable, that are thrown into a swamp, that are combined with like nautical motifs as well. Large wooden columns you might see on a pier or the mast of a ship. And yet you've got like big comfy duvets and pillows and things like that. So there's a contradiction here, and we get to see the confused intersection of these two possible futures, I guess.
Una vez más, aplaudo cómo se refuerza temáticamente y poéticamente de alguna manera lo que se quiere tratar en el nivel. En este caso, el contraste entre lo natural y lo salvaje y lo artificial y opulento.
Much effort went into the remastering of the track Undercurrent, as the original is somewhat intense and potentially annoying when playing over several times. This is partly due to the nasal quality of the lead cello, some cluttering in the mid-range of the spectrum, and an overall narrow stereo field. So in this case, the stems came in handy, and they were all processed and improved individually before added to the final mix. For the solo part, played on an electric cello, the nasal quality was caused by a small spike around 1200 Hz. Interestingly, this spike got evened out by way of match EQ when using an acoustic cello recording as reference. A match EQ allows you to analyze the frequency spectra of a target and a reference sounds respectively, and then calculate an EQ curve based on the difference between the two. In this case, the resulting EQ curve, illustrated in orange, represents the treatment that the electric cello needed in order to adopt the spectral makeup of the acoustic cello. Generally, the original mix was quite narrow in terms of stereo width, which was primarily solved by adding width to the original stems, giving each instrument its own defined space in the mix. You can hear the difference between the final mixes by toggling between the original and remastered version.
Y por eso, señoras y señores, es que no me dedico a la música o al sound design, porque es para gente que está mal de la cabeza.
Most of the levels, you go into them, and there's a name for the level, and it comes up on the screen. And it kind of tells you what the level's about, but not really in a spoilery way, hopefully. Right. For this level, I was like, what name do I put there? That kind of doesn't spoil this thing.
I see.
Like, if you called it Handoff or something, that gets... Maybe people don't know exactly what that means, but you're going to kind of spoil the idea.
Or sacrifice, similarly.
Sacrifice would be the sacrifice of Isaac. Yeah.
You kind of know that, like, okay, one of my guys probably gets killed in the spikes here.
And you ruined the feeling and the surprise and, like, the gut clench that happens.
Right.
And so I was like, oh, well, this is also a place where I can break the pattern.
Mm-hmm.
So I break the pattern here, and, well, there's two things that happen, right? The level fades in. There's an icon representing the level.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a name.
Mm-hmm.
And for this level, there's an icon, which just illustrates somebody standing next to a pit with a key, and no name.
Mm-hmm.
And that felt to me like a good place to put it. Because the fact that there's no name, before you even go into the level, is communication. Because we broke the sequence.
Mm-hmm.
You notice that, hopefully, unless you're just sleepwalking through the game.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, that's weird.
Mm-hmm.
What?
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, okay, I'm going to tread carefully for a little bit. like the human mind just has this in it, right? Like I'm going to tread carefully for a little bit because I don't know
what's going on here.
I don't know exactly what's going on.
Yeah.
Something changed, right? And so that's what that is. It's a little signal that this is an area of a little bit more tension or a little bit more drama or something, right? But also you get to decide that. Like I don't play music to make you feel a certain way. I mean,
Right.
apart from the music that's already in the game, I don't go dun 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 as the thing fades
Or
in
like
or whatever.
tense violins.
No. In fact, it's a small change.
Right.
And it's not linguistic. In fact, we take away the language.
Yeah.
It's more like body language or something.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? It's the body language of the game is
Right.
like suddenly the game feels a little bit strange about something and isn't saying hi to you
Right.
in the morning when it
Yeah.
normally would.
Okay.
And it's like, wait,
It's passive aggressive.
did I not do the dishes last night? Like what?
Yeah.
Why is this?
Right.
And that's one of the examples that stands out the most in my mind in the game. It's one of my favorite examples. It's subtle enough that, again, I'm not sure a lot of people think much about it consciously because that fade in only lasts a couple of seconds. And then probably
Yeah.
what most people remember is the actual level that comes after. But the thing to realize is how that level is received. The part that people remember, their experience there depends on the initial conditions.
Right.
Right? Even if they forget the initial conditions.
Right, yeah.
And so initial conditions are important.
Y es la marca de un gran diseñador tocar todos los rincones del juego, que no haya nada que esté exento de ser toqueteado o transgredido, si es por una buena razón, por supuesto, ¿no? No, este nivel no tiene nombre. Fíjate vos qué haces emocionalmente con eso.
So we notice that the key, like the bunny, has the purple glow. So we know that it's something that both we and our shadow can interact with. And, you know, that gap is wide, but not so wide that I didn't try a couple of times to get the timing just right to jump across it, and it's just a little bit too far. And then, of course, the solution is our own shadow leaps across and hands it to us as we reach out our hand just far enough to catch it, and he dies in the spikes, but he sacrificed himself for us.
There's two things I can say at least about designing this. One of them is the tolerances required to make this work are actually kind of tight. Again, anytime you jump, right, you have a choice of how close to the edge of the platform do you jump.
Right.
It has to be completely impossible to jump across the gap from the right, otherwise the puzzle is ruined. At the same time, as we want this gap to be wide, we also need it to be narrow because when you're standing back on the other side, it needs to be plausible that you're grabbing the key. Like you need to intersect with the key as it arcs over. And that's actually pretty hard.
You know those movies where there's a parallel you in some other universe, and, you know, then there's this awesome scene where finally you and they meet and, you know, reach through, I don't know, a mirror or whatever the thing is that separates us from that parallel universe. And it's poignant and, I don't know, like that to me, this was a really cinematic moment. And I felt for him. I mean, he's dying. He's dying to give us the key.
Sí, es muy cinemático. Y a mi favor quiero decir que en mi cabeza lo resolví segundos antes de que los audios me dieran la respuesta. ¡No tengo que hacer eso!
This is a little bit of a violation of, like, if I were an extreme puzzle purist when I made this game, such as I perhaps am a little bit more today, I would have thought more about whether this is a good idea for a puzzle, because this was one of those top-down puzzle designs where it's like, it would be neat if you had to use one guy to distract a monster, right? And then go sneak in, right? That was the
Right.
whole idea. And I just thought about how can I make that? And it's difficult to do that because if rabbits are out in the open, you can just kill them by jumping on them, right? Or you could jump over them to get past them. Like it's actually pretty difficult to come up with a scenario using the base game rules that would enable that puzzle. And so I added a little bit of extra code to this one guy that he just doesn't like to come out of his little cubby hole. So there's no way to jump on him.
Well, rabbits have different personalities.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I do think there's an extent to which maybe it makes the puzzle a little bit more random, right? Because when you know the complete behavior of something, you have all the information that you need to like decide how to deal with it. That said, these rabbits don't show up that often in the game. And when they do, you're sort of panicking anyway, right? But here
very
it's
scary.
like, if you observe that his behavior is different, right? Like, oh, I expect him to keep chasing me and then he doesn't quite. Well, how else is the behavior different, right?
I feel bad for him, actually. He looks a little bit sick. He looks a little sad.
Maybe that's why he doesn't want to come out.
Yeah. But it's true. You have all this space on the right, and you feel like you ought to be able to lure him out there and then just bonk him. But
Yeah. And that just doesn't work. And that's a little weird, but it's not really something that people complain about the game, so maybe it's fine.
all right.
El diseño alternativo del puzzle. Ahora que es un purista del diseño de puzzles.
Here is a simpler version of the mimic distraction puzzle. I did think of this form of puzzle when designing the original game, but I felt it would be too easy to solve accidentally, or even when solving deliberately, it just wouldn't feel as strong. The aspect of the final design of having to enter a long passage from both sides necessitates more premeditation, and it just feels better to me. But that final design requires special programming to get the rabbit not to leave its area, because if he did go out from beneath the overhang, you could easily just jump on him and kill him. That is to say, this rabbit does not behave quite like the other ones, and the only reason for that is to implement this puzzle. Some designers would consider this a hack that acts as a mild blemish on the game. Here, to prevent the rabbit from being killed, we make the player climb up into a restricted area from which the rabbit cannot leave and cannot be attacked from above. Thus, no special programming hack is required. This initial cliff on the left is here because the rabbit chases you very slowly when you are far away. So, if you were able to wake him up and then walk to the left side of the level, you could coax him to walk all the way over to the left. Then you could successfully race to the ladder and win without using the parallel universe at all. Because that would break the puzzle, we prevent it. Today, with much more design experience, do I like this version of the puzzle better? Probably, as I'm more of a purist about these weird hacks. But there's still something enticing about the symmetry of you and your shadow entering a tunnel from opposite sides, having the rabbit chase you in opposite directions. I wonder if, by working on this further, I could come up with an even better version of this puzzle that retains that symmetry.
No soy un fanático del purismo, para nada.
This is already a pretty developed concept for World 5, and it's exploring how to represent the key time behavior of World 5, which is that you can create a parallel universe where your shadow self goes out and does horrible deeds on your behalf, or nice things. Here we see Tim jumping across a gap, and then not depicted as he rewinds, and then the shadow goes and jumps across the gap and jumps and kills this little creature. I guess this idea was that we could replace the background with a kind of screen and then project a lot of light. You see the light shining, and then the shadow world would just be the shadow. So it's pretty straightforward. We ended up doing something in a way more subtle that wouldn't replace the entire background, but it's kind of a neat idea.
And it is very you to want a shadow world.
Is it? I resent that. I think also there's I like playing with theatrical motifs for some reason. So there are these hanging curtains. I think with the lights look like theatrical stage lights maybe. And then, what's it called when you have like shadow puppets?
Is it just called shadow puppets?
Yeah, I think so.
I think that's called shadow puppets.
This is just showing the visual development of World 5. I guess this earliest one does look the most like some piers, like a pier you would walk down with some weird sheet metal that's used a bit unrealistically. I do like the colors here. I like that light blue that's combined with the brown and the red. As it progresses, there's more detail. There's more of these home interior things like the rugs and the pillows, which we talk about elsewhere. And then the background becomes more light, first of all, more value difference, and more fragmented, more abstracted. I think I drew this because I just like this moment in the game so much. It's not that useful as far as the game development, except that it got me imaginatively involved in this scene. But actually, there's not much I did in the game to enhance the scene beyond just building the scenery around it. I mean, it's a very memorable moment because of how you solve this puzzle and the way it feels and what it makes you think about. But really, like, the environment design doesn't support it in any particularly overt way. It's kind of understated. But I did want to explore this moment and show the emotion of how it might feel as Tim to receive this treasure, this key, from yourself as your shadow self is falling to his death. This is a weird one. I'm not really sure when it was made. It has this kind of red clay look, similar to the last concept with the shadow key handoff. There's a lift. I mean, there's certainly like moving platforms and lifts in the game, but yeah, I don't know. It's just kind of a weird oddity.
Nice. Sí, es muy cinemático. Es un nivel muy cinemático. Ambas soluciones son muy cinemáticas. Tampoco sé cómo las podrían haber soportado más de lo que lo hicieron. Como poder reforzar el dramatismo del sacrificio en el puzzle 1 y de la distracción en el puzzle 2. Creo que hicieron un gran trabajo y punto. Hasta acá llegamos en este episodio. Espero que lo estés disfrutando. De ser así, déjame algún engagement para levantar este canal. Este humilde canal, este pequeño canal. Mi nombre es Nachito y nos vamos a ver en el próximo episodio.